For more, we're joined by Syria expert Professor Rabi from the Moshe Dayan think tank in Tel Aviv. Thanks for joining us. Let's wind back to this claim from Russia's Syria envoy that the refugees face no threat back home from the Assad government. Will they really be welcomed back or face reprisals and retaliation?
It depends who they are, but since most of them are being considered by the regime as troublemakers or oppositioners, I don't think that they would be hurry or rushing up in getting back to Syria. And I think that what Russia is doing is just to re-legitimize Bashar al-Assad, trying to actually provide everybody with the impression that business as usual are once again in Damascus. But basically, we know that this is kind of a tactic by which to sell the idea or the merchandise that Bashar is back in town and this is the same Syria we had seen before. Not for the refugees. They definitely know how cruel this guy is, Bashar al-Assad, and I dare say that most of them are going to have some second thought before getting back into Syria.
Uzi, those refugees may not be rushing back to Syria, but the countries that have absorbed them in the meantime, Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, have clearly see them as a burden. Lebanon even described them as an existential threat to the country. Is there a possibility or even a danger, given what you said, that if Assad stabilizes his military hold on the country, those countries are going to deport those refugees back?
Well, I'm not sure that that would be sort of an exodus which is going to be directed by those states, as you said. I think that there is a huge humanitarian problem here. Let's just remind ourselves that what we have in the Middle East and beyond is almost 100 people, 1 million people killed, 15 million displaced and refugees. This is a huge humanitarian saga, and I think that only by having kind of a Marshall Plan of the UN, United States and others, there could be even partial solution to that. Otherwise, I think that these people, sooner or later, are going to find themselves falling into the cracks and pay a heavy price for this atrocities.
Look, you raised the point the United States international community should invest money into Syria, the country surrounding it, to absorb these refugees. But is any amount of money going to convince Lebanon, a country that's always existed very much on a fragile balance between the different religious groups, to absorb upwards of 1 million Syrian refugees?
No, I think that this is a real problem. We talked about Jordan and Turkey, which is also kind of a half-baked issue. Lebanon, definitely not, because Lebanon is going
actually to these refugees then?
I think that they are going actually to be falling into the cracks sooner or later, as I said before. I'm not sure that somebody is going to deport them deliberately, but basically they are going to suffer actually of being stuck in the middle. And I think that Bashar al-Assad won't forget that these people, most of them are Sunnis, are basically, or for him, it is better to have them slaughtered once again, either in Syria or out of Syria. And I think that this problem is not going actually to be solved out. What we're going to have here is many, many refugee camps, not only of Palestinians actually that were part and parcel of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but the Middle East is going to have actually different sorts of refugees all over the place, and this will become part and parcel of the Middle East microcosm or Middle East kaleidoscope.
You raised the prospect here of slaughter if these Sunni refugees go back. Do you believe that Bashar al-Assad's post-war plan for Syria is not in fact turning the clock back and returning to normal, but a system of what? Systematic industrialized murder?
I mean, what Bashar al-Assad is doing currently in the recent months is what we call tashayyu in Arabic, which is Shiitization of Syria. Let me just remind you that once in the 20th century, only 11 or 12% of the population were Alawite/Shiite in Syria. Nowadays, we do talk about a quarter, 1/4 of the population, Shiite/Alawite, and this is something which is very, very important. The socio-composition features of Syria are going to be changed, and Bashar al-Assad is going actually to consider kind of a retaliation for all those who didn't actually pay loyalty for him. Look at what happened with the Druze villages in the Golan Heights when ISIS actually massacred them. This is exactly the Middle East in kind of a nutshell. Bashar al-Assad, very loyal to the legacy of his father Hafiz al-Assad, knows definitely that the best rule he can have is a rule without opposition. And this runs into collision course with what the world still thinks. Change the regime, change the system, talk about parliamentarism. Well, this is a pie in the sky.
It's not really going to happen at this point, is it?
Well, let me ask you, given all that you've just said, and given Defense Minister Lieberman's comments this morning warning of the danger of the Syrian army, battle-tested, emerging even stronger than before, how careful should the international community, especially the West, be about plans to rebuild Syria, a Syria that is going to be, even what you said, perhaps even worse than it was prior to the civil war?
Listen, I mean, I think that Israel could buy the notion of having Bashar al-Assad the ruler of Syria if things are going to get back to status quo ante, which means actually the pre-Arab Spring situation. But this is not the situation.
Well, let's remind viewers the situation on the Israeli-Syrian border was stable.
Yeah, but what I agree with you, but this is a different Syria. You have Iran in it, and Iran, its militiamen are becoming Syrian citizens. They are going to serve as Trojan horses in the army of Syria, in the actually civilians in the Golan Heights. So Israel should be on the alert. We have kind of a very, very, I would say, delicate Middle East, especially now. And of course, what we are having here is everybody for itself, Israel included, and we have to be very, very careful as to not let Bashar al-Assad act in, let us say, contrast to the 1970s.
Well, one change from before will be a heightened profile role for Russia in Syria. Will they not act as a moderating influence to these other influences you just said?
So this is the Israeli challenge. How to be on the same time assertive when it comes to the military means, but be very elegant and very creative, diplomatically speaking, because you have to take into account that Russia is the boss here. And this is why, actually, I see that what we have here is a different play. Israel should adjust itself to the newly created situation. This is not the same Syria, and what you said about Russia is just kind of a right to the point. And I think that, again, Syria could be taken for all of us as kind of a microcosm by which to exemplify how tumultuous the change of the Middle East